Hey, welcome to the exchange. I want to look at the overall Ukraine crisis we have now, day 7 going into day 8. Also look at Russia oil exports, kind of what's going on behind the scenes, why oil skyrocketed so much to about 110 a barrel right now. Also look at capital flight in Russia, why it's affecting the Russian economy, kind of where they go from here, and then what it means for U.S. and European investors. So this is the overall layout of Ukraine right now. Here's what's going on overall in day 7, day 8. This is from Scribble Maps. I'm going to drop this on the description. That way you guys can look at it on your own time. I'll start north first, kind of see where we're at right now. So what you see right here is really two Russian flanks. You see the western flank of it off the Dampier River and the eastern flank off the Dampier River. Russian flank's not as bad for Ukraine because they split the forces in two. So you see right here, this actual force coming down south is like there's a southern tip right here. It's actually been isolated by Ukrainian attacks, both from the east and from the west. They actually have a land bridge going east and west overall. You also have the Russian force right here, even though it's pretty well established. You have basically side attacks to supply chain lines overall, and those rear lines actually attacking over in the west right here. The actual east of Dampier River is a little bit worse. So really, it's a lot more sporadic fighting. So you see like sporadic Ukrainian lines, which are represented in blue. Also, the Russians, I mean, they're getting very close to overall Kiev proper. I mean, they're almost in the eastern suburbs right now. They've been there for a few days. Not quite moving that fast, but I mean, you see really heavy fighting in Chernihiv, right up in the north up here. I mean, but it's very sporadic. But basically, what the Russians are doing is they're bypassing cities to save time and basically bypass those, which is fine because you have speed that way. You actually get down south faster. The bad part of there is overall is hey, your rears are exposed. So if they want to counterattack from these bypass cities, I mean, it'd be very exposed to your supply chains, your less armored vehicles overall. Looking overall in the northeast, again, like I said earlier, you see sporadically bypass cities. I mean, Sumi's been put up a hell of a fight the last 4 or 5 days. But even though the Russian front is behind them, this is right here. These cities behind there are still putting up a large fight. So I mean, these are not secure cities by far overall. You're seeing Kharkiv down here again. Another. It's not bypass. I mean, they've been putting up a hell of a fight. The Russian line actually hasn't bypassed them yet. They might in the future though, potentially just to like put more pressure on Kharkiv overall. But we'll see what happens with that. Overall, in the Donbass region, like here's Donetsk and Luhansk. They're not much change there. It's pretty well established. Not much movement either east or west overall. Crimea is really the worst front for the Ukrainians. I mean, that's been the most land gains for the Russians overall. So looking at the eastern side of Crimea, you really see if they actually hooked up with the actual Donbass region forces, the separatist forces. They're basically surrounding Mariupol. So Mariupol is still under Ukrainian control. It's holding fast. They're fighting pretty hard overall, but it is surrounded. They are getting bombed heavily, so that's overall it's pretty bad. It might fall, who knows, in a couple hours, a couple days. Kherson's been in the news all day. This overall all the Crimean Peninsula. I mean, they're getting surrounded too. Russian forces are all around them. The city itself it's Russian controlled to a degree. I mean, it's interesting really looking at like secure versus seize. So the Russians have seized the city overall, but it's not secure overall. So like they're in the city center. They have forces there. That's very true, but they actually haven't established dominance. They actually haven't secured it overall, where it's like safe. You have freedom of travel for Russian forces. I mean, this is still a very much contested city overall. The actual front right here is around Mykolaiv. They're right there fighting. That's the actual true front. The big fear is they seize Odessa, which is a major port city. But I mean, it's a long way. You're talking like potentially 100 plus kilometers from where they're at right now. And that's again supply chain issues, fuel issues. It could be much harder for the Russians overall. So right now, not much of a change. I mean, up north is obviously the main effort overall. Down south, they're making large gains. But I mean, again, Ukrainians are holding on strong. They're disrupting supply chains. Another thing to mention too is like overall the actual linear map you see right here, just because it's like red overall for like the eastern half of the city, again doesn't mean it's secure. Doesn't mean every block of every inch of land is secure by Russian forces. There's Ukrainian forces sporadically all throughout these areas. So again, keep that in mind for the future. So this is the current WTI crude April 22 contract. So basically the current oil price you see right now. It's about 109. This morning hit about 111, 112 overall range. It really rose up. I mean, it's pretty steady around 91 in the past few weeks overall. But I mean, really seeing this big spike. What the spike is showing you is it's really this like impromptu sanctions. It's not really pure sanctions like from like Biden or from the EU or anybody else. But what you have right here is actual oil consumers in Europe and the U.S. actually not bidding for, not buying these oil contracts from the Russian exporters overall, which is kind of surprising though too, because it's created this artificial almost supply-demand imbalance overall. I mean, we'll see what happens, how long this is going to last for. But I mean, really the big fear is, hey, they don't want to buy these contracts because, hey, they know potentially late March or April timeframe. I mean, this might be embargoes, might be full embargoes, full sanctions. They may not be able to deliver these actual oil barrels potentially in the future. That's really the big fear we have right now, is the fear of delivery risk, where it's like, hey, if I buy this contract, even though it might be cheap oil overall, I may not get delivered in April timeframe. It might be either worse or potentially even never overall. So that's the big fear they have for oil consumers, which is not irrational. It definitely makes sense. Then on the Russian home front, you really have two kind of battles here. The first battle is this overall capital flight issue, and the second battle is obviously the oil price, which I mentioned earlier. So capital flight is a big thing. So about the ruble overall, the way it's trading at, it's roughly trading at, I think, 115 or 109 right now for basically ruble versus USD. And the whole fear there is that, hey, if everyone sells off the rubles, everyone dumps the ruble as a currency and goes into whether it's crypto or assets or gold, silver, whatever it might be, it's going to basically devalue the currency even further. You're going to basically have a currency devaluation shock where it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So this is really showing you kind of the symptoms of that. So right here is this is a Russian central bank putting a 30% commission on foreign currency exchange. So basically, if you want to buy euros with rubles, basically take the asking price at 30%, and that's the actual exchange price. I mean, it shows you an economy and a central bank in absolute distress. They have no idea what they're doing, and they understand, hey, if they don't react fast now, the Russian economy and the Russian currency is going to collapse within a matter of days or weeks. And that's really the big fear that Putin has. He knows, hey, he has a matter of potentially days before the economy absolutely implodes. And the Russians, I mean, whether propaganda or not, they're going to feel that. It's going to happen. So this is the USD versus ruble graph. All it's saying is, hey, for every US dollar you buy, right now you can buy 109 rubles of value. And what you see right here in the past, since the 28th or 25th or 28th, you have this basically volatility going back and forth. And it's really what this shows you is, hey, it's like these large spikes, these large dumps. This is basically the volatility going up, being like, hey, we want to sell the ruble. It's massive selling pressure on one side. But then on the other side, these like large downswings you're seeing, basically the Russian central bank being like, hey, we're buying rubles no matter what happens. We're selling off our foreign currency, our gold, our silver, all of our reserves, even potentially domestic assets, whoever can buy them, because we want to keep buying rubles in order to maintain the currency stability. The problem is here, though, is like the Russian stock market's been closed all week. They'll probably closed all next week. Once things open up, eventually, whether it's next week or the week after or whenever it happens, this is going to absolutely collapse. I mean, these prices you see right now, these are artificial numbers overall. This is not going to maintain itself. I mean, I really see the Russian ruble might be falling to 200, 300 range overall. So, I mean, it might devalue like 50% plus. Same thing with the equity market overall. So the Russian equity market right now is almost imploded. I mean, it's almost uninvestable. So you're going to see foreign outflight of cash flows once it actually opens up overall. But this is going to be a disaster. This is really the time bomb that Putin and Russia have unleashed. I mean, you're not seeing it yet, but it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And that's why I see Russian citizens trying to either leave the country, take their capital, buy other assets like gold and silver, or buy other, potentially leave with cash. We're also seeing capital controls where they can't leave with, I think it's over $10,000 of cash overall leaving the Russian economy. I mean, it's going to be really bad. And this is one of those things where, hey, win or lose in Ukraine, this is going to affect the Russian economy more than anything else overall. So, I mean, this is real effects, and it's going to get much, much worse before it gets better, if ever. So this is another behind-the-scenes article I want to look at, too. This is from Reuters.com. So the Iranian nuclear deal got basically scrapped a couple of years ago. And now there's an idea of like, hey, we're going to make a new deal under Biden's or potentially be a new nuclear deal to basically lift sanctions off the Iranian economy. When Iranians offering potentially, they're offering 1 million barrels per day of oil potentially. So basically extra supply coming on the market. It could be there within 2 months according to this article. So the idea there is, hey, if the nuclear deal is established like it was, I think 2017 timeframe, then we'll go back to exporting oil. This is from the Iranian economy, and this is 1 million barrels per day. So give you some perspective right there. So a full Russia sanction, about 5 million barrels per day of exports going to like NATO plus countries overall. So this is really 20% of that. I mean, if it happens, it'll be fantastic. That'll basically offset the kind of supply gap we have right now. I mean, if it doesn't, it'll just be a little bit more pain potentially. But I mean, this is another option that Biden might have potentially to actually offset some of that loss. Again, but this is a very politically charged issue. We'll see what happens with this. But it's going to be a very dynamic situation for the Iranian economy. Hey, so what's the so what here for European and American investors? And really what you have seen here, again, it's like before, is you have that volatility. We're going to see oil prices kind of have that volatility too. So the idea there is we might have potentially either, tighter squeeze, potentially you can see higher prices of transportation, like airlines, etc. I mean, gas lines are a potential chance too, but if people panic, I don't think we're quite there yet. The shortfall is not that great, especially in the U.S. markets. European markets might be much, much worse. So, I mean, the big fear is, hey, this spiraled out of control. We have basically a massive oil shock to the market, which we're having right now a little bit. But again, this Ukraine crisis, I mean, I showed you on the map earlier. I mean, I think it's going to wind down fast just because the Russian advances are going to be slower and slower and slower. And the Russian economy overall is imploding. It really is. I mean, we're not seeing the results just yet. You're seeing really the foreshocks before the main shock actually hits. But I mean, Russian people, they know, hey, they only have so much time before either things are bad, or either things get worse and worse and worse, almost like North Korea kind of style, or it's, hey, Putin calls it off, and all of a sudden things can recover, favorably, which again will help all U.S. equity markets and the U.S. oil market and global oil market in general. So, hey, let me know your thoughts, though, for sure. This is definitely a complex topic. And if you like the video overall, hit the like button. If you like the channel, hit the subscribe button. Definitely appreciate the support from everybody else, and have a good day and crush life.